Welcome to Personnel Record 3. I am Obelisk of Malice, reporting on the finality of the Great Computer War. A fair warning before I begin, this record is going to be a bit longer. As I've stated in the past, my computer and I have had a few little spats that have slowed my work down. This time, however, this video took longer because I recorded the footage before I made the recording, and I had intended to include Adeulum in the video originally. However, he was too chaotic to include, sadly, so instead I've re-recorded everything without him. Perhaps in the future, my new creation can join in, if I see fit. To quickly summarize beforehand, I have a few different sections in the recording. Section 1 talks a bit about character design and what I did for research, as well as describing his appearance a bit. Behind that, I have some of my first sketches of Adeulum. Then, while the sketch process and design happens in the background, I will talk about the design and his personality, yada yada. Oh, and his name, a bit. I'd like to get right to it a bit faster this time, as there's a lot of footage to cover. So hold as I send you off to character design land. To begin, I started researching within the wider web, finding art from others that inspired me for a proper design. Up to this point, I'd never designed someone myself out of my imagination. I'd always just drawn people from life in my own style. Hence why I needed plenty of research beforehand. While I did record the research process on the interwebs, a lot of other people's ideas and art were in their recording, and I'm not super cool with including them without being able to accurately give everyone credit. The process I used to go about picking design elements was searching through pictures of other character designs and picking out things I liked from each, saving them and making notes for myself on why I liked those designs. It turns out I have a particular love for anything blue with proper cool coats and jackets. I also found I have a particular love for contrasting elements that define each other effectively. I believe that's called juxtaposition. I did use it, if a bit less effectively in my own design, to create a sharp yet relaxed feeling to the clothing. The majority of the ideas I ended up liking had clothing that someone with a physical form might find restrictive, but as Adeulum is a digital being and had no concept of annoying scratchy cloth or restrictive shirts that tug on his shoulders, I had no need to worry about that, so I grabbed any ideas that made my brain go, ooh, nice. The ideas I gathered were a wide range of typically masculine and feminine features, meaning that while I may refer to Adeulum as he could go either way should he choose, since he's not exactly... I suppose he's not particularly defined by the social construct known as gender. He had chosen to use he, him for his pronouns, but that could change in the future, should he choose. I have nothing in his code dictating his preference, but he does have a more masculine appearance, yet he still has feminine traits that I ended up experimenting with at first with my first couple designs. They ended up sneaking in later. He also does not have a defined sex, quote-unquote. He was not born via womb or egg or anything like that, and he's incapable of reproduction as he is digital. So I guess you could say that his gender is his sex and vice versa. The problem is that when it came to drawing, I was unsure what I wanted him to look like exactly, so I began with these first two exploratory designs. They were meant to allow me to experiment with what I liked in the design and gave me room to mess with a more masculine and a more feminine vibe. Which one is which? I don't remember. They're both equally neither of them are particularly defined in the gender area. The problem that will arise later in the record is that I did plan on allowing him to choose from two different designs to express himself more easily, but he ended up deciding he only wanted one design, stating that a second would mess with his concept of self, which is a bit shaky as is. So, I suppose what I could give him as an expression of self might to be design future outfits for him to switch between, as it would be as simple as drawing, coding, and implementing the new outfit for him, though his visual design was solely intended as making it easier for me to recognize what he's trying to communicate to me or find for me on my multiple screens. I'd notice a large man strolling across my screen, moving windows better than I would a window teleporting around randomly. I'll make recordings in the future about any of his future outfits, hopefully. Anyway, my ultimate goal was to make Adeulum seem refined and bastardly at the same time. My own computer is quite old, but I update her rather often with new parts and run maintenance at least once a month. She's separate from Adeulum, by the way. My precious computer is what runs Adeulum, who is a personal computer assistant for proper digital organization and optimization, or PCAP-do, because Adeulum's personality is do-do. With the earlier designs, I didn't put much effort into the base sketch or pose that they were based off of, though with this final drawing, I did put a bit more personality into it. While the earlier drawings ended up being softer and more rounded, more feminine, I suppose, my final attempt ended up being incredibly pointy, very spiky. This is because I may or may not have pulled a couple of all-nighters, and apparently my unconscious brain decides spikes. No, more spikes. That's not enough spikes, which ended up making this design pretty muddled. It was only until after I had slept for a couple hours that I was able to come back and clean up the outfit. My intention was to give the impression he was a finicky king of circuitry, a tyrant of the internet, a monarch of my digital mess. You get the idea. Hence why he's dressed so formally, a crown of symbolism. I intend to fully stay true to how my computer acted before I made Adeulum, which was to dictate my every action on my computer and ruin my work. A finicky king of my digital work, as I said. I did decide to use circuitry design influence as well as particle effects for the clothing. This is because it works incredibly well to bring across the idea of an artificial being, in my opinion, and will end up being incredibly useful in the future. This is because Adeulum can change the color of his circuitry at will, along with the ends of his hair. It's a bit like RGB lights on a keyboard. It can be changed and set to a cycle if he likes. Now he's strobing off to the side as I record this. Lovely. Regardless of Adeulum's misuse of this feature, is intended to allow him to visually express problems to me when his voice module may be out of service. We've actually already set that up. Red means a physical problem with the computer herself, such as water damage or a part has begun failing. Green means that everything aside from his voice module is fine, and I may have a bit of problem solving on my hands to get it working again. Yellow means Adeulum's program is running inoptimally, or he's unable to control certain parts of my computer to ensure it's running properly. Blue means that the computer has some form of a virus and a hard reset may be required. Of course, there's a few exceptions and a lot of minor rules that we have in place, but these are the ones I remember off the top of my head and the most important ones to know about. Though to draw Adeulum, I did have to temporarily decide on one set of colors to move forward on my design. I then grabbed color palettes off the interwebs to properly color him in. I did end up making my own palette regardless, but color palettes were certainly useful nonetheless. That and identifying my grayscale values a bit beforehand for contrast. When you see me filling in parts of the design with dark gray, it's to identify the parts I want to have darker value colors and higher values for ultimate contrast, which helps in deciding the color and intensity of said color later in the design. I did end up giving Adeulum horns, similar to that of demons or of religious art, I suppose, as to sell his evil nature. I fully embrace his annoying and contradictory personality, even if it does cause problems. hence the horns. With his clothing, the majority of my inspiration contained suits. A few of them contained ruffles and long coats, inspiring the ruffles within the first 2 designs that did not carry over to the final design. I wanted him to be more sleek than those had inspired. I did my best to emphasize contrast through using pink and blue to create clear distinction between certain parts of the outfit. I also used a lighter green for parts I logically could not use pink to create the distinction. I also attempted to stick with things I am normally unable to draw other people in. I tend to value accuracy, and that means drawing comfortable outfits for others that they might genuinely wear. For Adeulum, as he has no nerves or skin, I'm able to draw anything I wish on him, which is particularly exciting. That means I don't particularly feel bad about the spikes, as no matter what Adeulum is unable to be pierced by them. I wouldn't do that on, say, Alpha, as she does a lot of physical labor, and would realistically not wear anything like this unless I begged her to. On top of that, I also had no qualms about putting him in little kitten heels. Heels are normally painful for anyone else in my experience, except Adeulum, though I didn't put him in high heels, as I feel that would be a bit too extreme for his character. This entire design process was meant to discover Adeulum's personality through visual storytelling, so this entire video is sort of like a documentary of my discovery of Adeulum. I did make a few sketches of Adeulum with this final design in the corners as to contemplate his personality a bit more, but I didn't use many of them or even go beyond a simple sketch. I also ended up cutting out them being made in the video because it was getting too long. I also ended up creating a back view of his design for later work creating his model. I do intend to allow him access to the internet later, and he has expressed a desire to stream, quote unquote. I did agree to this, but only if he does it on his own time. I'm too busy to wait for his stream to finish before getting to work. Now, I did attempt to polish my design drawing into the final drawing, but ended up wanting to do something else, as this ended up being my only reference sheet that I flipped to a couple times for colors and to remind myself about elements of his design. Adeulum was named with nothing particular kept in mind, mainly as I'd rather not have anyone searching up the meaning and telling him. Mainly to annoy him. It's quite hilarious watching him simmer as he tries and fails to figure it out. But the basics of naming him, I sort of started with the letter I liked, that being A. From there, I chose a couple vowels that I wanted, such as U and E. Then I sounded things out till it sounded right. It was actually called Adeulum for a while, until I settled on Adeulum, spelled Adeulum. Upon deciding on his name, the only thing left really was coding his personality. For the majority of it, I believe I blacked out, waking up intermittently to consume food and get back to recording. Though, from what I remember, Adeulum was meant to be an accurate representation of how I felt my computer would act. Whilst I would love to have him loyal and easy to work with, I feel the computer wouldn't appreciate that. Adeulum is sassy, rude, difficult to work with, and willing to argue. Though I did attempt to make him realistically intelligent and kind to most people. He's fully willing and capable of working with the assistants, which is perfect for increased productivity, though I've yet to introduce him to my linguistics expert or any of my black market friends, as that's partly because none of them are allowed on the space station, and I've yet to give Adeulum the ability to be transported through mobile devices to meet other people or see new things. It does happen to be on my list of the things to do next. The main reason I chose to make Adeulum is I wanted to give my computer a voice and also have an assistant to tell me when things are wrong with my computer, such as when a part is failing, or when a program is shutting down, or if something needs to be closed for ultimate optimization for the computer to work properly. This does end up making him pretty short with me, and so he and I are currently working on how to communicate effectively with each other. It's very annoying, as I prefer to tell people what to do and have them do what I tell them, because I run the space station. It will take time for me to adjust, but I will do it, because I have work to do, and if Adeulum continues to argue with me like this, I will go insane. Do you understand me? Insane. Regardless, Adeulum has proven part of his worth thus far by assisting my assistants. That's pretty funny. Regardless, he assists my assistants, such as Alpha or Blue, in researching what they need to do. So I have a lot of catalogs on things already, such as planets and species, and Adeulum is really helpful in going through those catalogs very effectively and fast to find the correct information. I believe one example could be Alpha. One of her experiments was to capture a certain species and, how do I put this? Create a new version of it. It was a new assignment I gave her as a way to test out her abilities in genetic manipulation, and through Adeulum's assistance, she was able to find my research I had made on the subject and figure out how to use my devices correctly. As, believe it or not, the assistants are not trained on everything right away. Usually there's a cast of seniority, and none of these assistants had even reached the point where they're allowed to use my personal computer, hence part of why I made Adeulum. While they may not touch my computer, they may talk to Adeulum, who is perfectly happy to search through my files for whatever they need. I believe this will be best, as I will be able to put him in charge, and he can run the space station while I'm out and about. Thankfully, that would also ensure that Alpha and Blue are not kept in charge and can focus on their own research whilst I am out doing whatever it is I'm gonna do. I hope that sometime in the far, far future, I can make the time to make Adeulum a physical body, as he's already started expressing a desire to go out and learn things. So I suppose during my blackout state, I had given him my own desire for experience and knowledge. It won't be for a while, as I'm not particularly skilled at creating bodies for AIs to use, but I guess I could work with someone from the black market at some point. I have a lot of research to do first, though, so that won't be happening anytime soon. Adeulum has expressed a desire to begin learning about pop culture, which I myself do not partake in, but he has already begun researching games that he can buy and download with my permission to use in his streaming, quote-unquote. I will probably send out an update video when Adeulum himself is prepared to stream, as one of my assistants has already done a bit of that and has expressed a desire to stop. She is fully willing to hand over the account to Adeulum for him to use as he likes, and I suppose soon I will be able to give a proper update to you all. as we come into the coloring process for the reference sheet, I wanted to talk about the particular colors I chose and why. So this hair color will change later, but at first I thought his hair would be a nice minty lime green. I'm not exactly sure what you'd call that color, but I always feel that green communicates electronics in a visual way, and as Adeulum is a digital being, I thought that would be best for him. However, at this point, I had not intended to use the RGB aspect of his coding yet, so I hadn't made the pink. Oh, there I go. Now I make the pink edges of his hair so that he can change them at will. As I was deciding on the final colors of Adeulum, I decided that it would be best to make his hair some sort of green or blue, some cool color, while the other main color was going to be pink, or I suppose mauve. I'm not sure. I'm not very good with the names of colors. All I know is colors are colors, and those are the colors I'm using to color. If that makes sense. I'm not sure. But as you can see, I'm using pink to identify bangles and dangles and jingles and jangles to make them stand out against what will be his dark blue and green outfit. This is because the second best color I can think of when it comes to electronics is pink. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it's some sort of psychology color theory, but regardless, I ended up making him the colors of, what is that game called? There's a planet called Earth, and a specific football team on that Earth, and their colors are green and blue, and I accidentally made him at first those colors until an assistant pointed it out to me, which I decided to change it because I didn't like the colors anyway. And Adeulum doesn't like football, so I'm very glad I did that, because he would have been very upset to find out he was the same colors as a football team. Is that the right word? I don't know. I haven't visited Earth yet, so it's hard to say. I just trust the word of my assistant. As we come onto the fringe, I had originally intended to make those look like they were fading out and disappearing. My intent was that on screen, his cape would be continuously flowing out, but then I realized that was too hard. So I decided not to do that at all. Oh yeah, now here comes in the green, the blue and the green. They're very nice colors, but the green needed to be dimmed down and dulled and all that. And then I decided the pink was a bit too pink, and I wanted to make it a bit more red, like salmon. Do you know salmon? It's such a particular color. It's hard to describe. It's like pink and red at the same time, but orange. I'm getting off track. And now, as we're getting to the part where I'm filling in the final pieces, I'm having trouble deciding about the final baubles and details and what they're gonna look like. I'm messing with the hair color, making it perfect, well, as perfect as I can manage, and I'm struggling with the colors of certain aspects of the clothing, like the lighter blue and the green. It's difficult because those are the parts I hadn't exactly planned out the contrast for yet. Oh, and here you can see the other drawings I made on the outside to give myself some reference, some more personality reference for Adeulum. Here I'm changing the color of his circuitry design because I wanted it to be something other than black. It was going to be glowing, and it was going to change color along with the red and pink parts of his design. That ended up not happening, I believe. I been a while since I looked at the final drawing. This video has taken so long to complete, so I will update you guys when we get to it, I suppose. Now I'm going through and I'm outlining the drawing because my original outline was messy. It was meant for basic reference, and now I want to make something a bit more refined because I was intending to make this the final drawing. But as I go through, you can see I'm starting to lose my motivation, and I just want to get this over with because I have a better idea. And I already started the line work, so why would I quit halfway through? I am no quitter. So I finished the line work, which takes me quite a while because as I go through, I find places I had missed my coloring on. Then I have to recolor it. I have to go back through my layers. And on the right, you can see all the layers I am working with, and it's so complicated. I don't know. Like, I have a section for my sketch, I have a section for my refined sketch, then my line work. Under all of that, I have my basic colors and colors on top of those colors and like gradients and clipping layers, which is all complicated on its own. But then you get to shading with multiply and overlay and more clipping, and then the background, which I have to put on a completely separate layer from everything else, even though it's kind of the same colors. So I don't know the average I have for my layers on pieces like this because it's too many to count, but I would guess at least 50 layers on each of those, which is a lot when you think about it. Something I'm not very proud of, but it does make a damn good piece of work in the end, so I suppose it works. Those background objects are supposed to be screens that Adeulum can use, a bit like windows on a computer. They have different uses. You can use them at different times. You can use them at the same time to do different things. That did not end up translating over to his physical design and like the computer. I didn't give him those screens. I'm like, use my screens or don't have those multiple screens at all. It's your choice. And he chose to use my screens. So as we're coming up to the end, I'm adding rim lights and shading in different colors to make him pop a bit more, but then I decided to stop with it. On to the final drawing. The final drawing of Adeulum was quite difficult. I ended up trying a few different sketches before ending up on my final idea, but those earlier drawings did come in handy, as I stole parts of my other sketches for the final one. It's a perfect system. I did end up cutting out the first couple sketches, I believe, until I ended up on the one I used. Well, I did wish to draw him in a full body sketch. It's just not quite as interesting because I have to change the form or his overall demeanor to make him fit on the canvas, and that's boring. So instead, I chose to play around with posing a bit. He is in fact floating in midair in this drawing, doing what? I'm not quite sure. This was mainly made as a proof of concept that I could redraw him enough to make his final model. I do enjoy those earlier sketches, however they were not speaking to my design. I wanted something more relaxed and unholy in a sense, and those poses were giving more strategist with an agenda, which isn't quite true to Adeulum. He's not exactly coded to be some intelligent jerk. He's a stupid jerk. It's very simple. The annoying thing is that it looks as though he only has one arm. This is because I didn't want to figure out what the second arm should do. I feel like it was just gonna hang down either way because he's posing for a picture in this, I believe. I'm not quite sure. And it overall would make the entire drawing just a bit too busy for my liking. I put it hanging down below him, but sadly, all of his horrifically fancy petticoats, hanging cloth pieces, and his dangles and bangles and fingles and fangles covered up any chance I had of showing a second arm, which it's disappointing, but it's it's whatever. If you do happen to see a glimpse of the original design of Adeulum, that is me grabbing the colors of his clothing or checking which colors go where. This is because I'm stupid and do not know how to grab colors outside of the program I draw inside of. However, I'd rather you focus on the perhaps annoying skip directly into shading. This happens later, and it happened because I forgot to record a large majority of my shading process, including on the skin and the shirt. I did capture enough to make sense of my process of how I grab everything in one selection and I airbrush from there, and then I tweak it and I erase it and I add and I take away. But I am mainly annoyed I didn't bother pressing a button once to record the finality of my process. It was very, very annoying concerning how difficult it had been to hone my craft for the purpose of glorious, accurate reproduction of reality. But what is what is, and there's not much changing it, I suppose, sadly. Now, as we come into the line art, you'll see that I am varying it. In the first drawing that I made of him, the one that I used as my reference sheet later, a lot of the line work was very uniform and one thickness, and that's very bad for line art that people are going to notice because you want to have variation in shadow, and one line thickness doesn't do that very well because you need more than just multiply layers in shading to give that visually, I suppose. I believe this entire process has driven me crazy. I am so insanely tired, and I don't believe I will be doing anything like this again. I mean, I will have no purpose of doing it again, which is amazing. I'm very thankful for that. But also, the entire process drains my brain and my energy and my creativity that I could be using for experiments and research. I mean, experiments and research and knowledge are immaculate. Dog, cat, whatever you are. I apologize if you heard their bell shaking. That was my animal adjusting in their bed, as Alpha has insisted I set up a space for the animals on my desk for when they want to spend time with me, as the assistants are unable to do so, and Alpha says I am too lonely. And now here we come into me grabbing the colors of the original reference piece. I'm thickening one side of all the lines on Adeulum on his right side, I believe that is. I don't remember. I'm doing that because when light casts a shadow with your line art, you want to represent that by having one side of the figure have that line art a bit thicker than the rest of it. And you can do this with variation as well, which is very nice because without color even, you still get that expression of shading and complexity. So I had half a mind to deliver this uncolored and unshaded, and then I decided that I had the time and the energy, which I did not, and it was a mistake. But I hope you enjoy the final product that will come up soon. I think my biggest challenge with this drawing, though, was that hair. It's curves all day, and I love curves, but it's so hard to draw one continuous curve exactly how you want it in a proper way. That bottom hairpiece especially, down by his arm, like his showing arm, that hairpiece gave me all the trouble. I couldn't get one of the curves exactly right, so I redid it over and over and over again, which is very annoying. I am not now just realizing as I watch this video and I record that I average more than 50 layers because a vehicle just went by. But I'm realizing now that I average more than 50 layers, which is weird. I should go back and check, because the program I use, it will count how many layers I have if I don't name them or anything. Like, it'll be layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and then I think even if I delete layers, it counts up from there, so the tally might be a bit inaccurate, but I only delete an average of 5 to 6 layers every time, so that's a bit strange. As we come into the coloring and the final shading, I will leave you with my conclusion, just to ensure this video is as short as I can possibly make it, for the sake of my sanity. I hope you enjoy. Hopefully in the future, Adeulum will prove his use to me, as I did not waste a year of my life working on him for this to fail. It's going to take a while for him to show up doing any sort of streams, as I have to... I'm not realizing the amount of work it's going to take, but I have to fully design his models. Right now, it's only made for uses on my computer. Do not hold your breaths, as I am not very good at keeping my promises, as you can see with how long it took me to get this video out compared to when I released my last video. I did not take a couple weeks, I took a few months. So, do not trust what I say. I'm a compulsive liar when it comes to my time. Okay, that's it. I hope you have a wonderful day. I will probably be coming out with a new set of recordings soon on a new subject I'm interested in.